Hey guys, we're back. This time we're going to be taking a look at the Sweet and Salty Factions expansion for GKR Heavy Hitters. This is from Weta Workshop. It's a pretty good sized box. Has 2 new factions in it with a heavy hitter and 3 support units, a bunch of cards to go with them, as well as a small rulebook. Was kind of disappointed when I got the box to find out it's a like flip top old school tuck box, basically, instead of a lift top box. I should have guessed with the windows in the front, but I was hoping. I have mine all set up to go in the Kickstarter box. I made little trays to put them in there, so I already have room for them, but you're probably going to end up tossing this box anyway. There's just a little disappointment for how much this thing cost as to how it was packaged, but it does require a copy of the original game to play. Just adds 2 new factions in there and a bunch of new weapon types and things. So we'll get right in and take a look. The box is actually quite a bit bigger than it needed to be. If you get underneath here, there's probably a good 2 inches on there that the box could have been trimmed down, and everything still would have fit nicely. Not sure why they made it as big as they did. The first thing we have here is our little rules flyer, and it says Wasteland Rulebook on it, and I think because mainly focuses on the sentry guns, in fact I think that's all that's in here, is the sentry gun rules from the Wastelands expansion. And at first it wasn't sure that they came with this, because nowhere on the website or even on the box contents does it mention the sentry guns, and a lot of people were upset thinking that they didn't come in here. I'm glad to see that they did, that they included that. The only thing they didn't include were the little rings that go around the bases of the pilot miniatures, if you have those. They were colored bases to represent who was using which pilot. I know a lot of people who have those ended up painting the miniatures anyway, like we did with Arcadia Quest. Nobody ever used those little colored rings on ours anyway, because they scratch up the paint on the base. So not a big loss there. I'm glad to see that they did put the sentry guns in here, though. So under our case here, I think it's Ultra Sweet and Super Salty. Not positive on that name, but the Ultra Sweet is the pink. They have a really cool looking heavy hitter with this, I'm not sure if it's a mortar or rocket launcher on his back. The gun, actually, I don't know if you can see it on there, says Gobstopper on it. Go Stopper. No, I think it's supposed to say Gobstopper. There's just a little thing on there. But, pretty interesting. I like the pink camouflage. There's hearts. Not sure if those were supposed to be on the joint and they're off-centered. I think it's part of like a camouflage scheme, but it turned out to be very heart-shaped on the elbow and kneecaps there. Very cool. I think there's even more detail on these in the paint than there was on the originals, which is kind of cool. We have our repair unit. I don't know how well these are going to focus, it's being dumb. But repair unit there, he's got a Medipack or toolbox in his hand. Kept with the cylindrical tube theme of the body too. We have our assault. It's got a big rocket launcher, or it's a ion cannon maybe. I haven't actually looked at their cards yet, but cool kind of cannon on there. And Recon, this really neat drone. It's got like little VTOL thrusters on there. For the salty guys, their heavy hitter here. So this big, kind of looks like a bazooka, rocket launcher. Doesn't seem to have many other secondary weapons. There's like a frag launchers up here like you'd see on a tank. I think this is some kind of cannon here. 45 on his butt. Then we have their repair unit. I think they're decently detailed. There's a bit more of a wash on these. Doesn't really come out a lot on camera, but Some of them have quite a bit more wash than the original set did. Their assault unit definitely looks like a missile support. Those look like rocket launchers of some kind. There you can see the wash where the details are kind of filled in. Some of the ones in the original set you couldn't even tell how to wash on them. And then a Recon unit. Interesting. I don't like the fact that they made the fan blade solid in the back. So it looks like just a solid plastic disc on there. I think they tried not to make the same mistake that was on the orange heavy hitter, where the helicopter blades on the top were all warped. So I mean, it's acceptable, but not nearly as nice. I like the little landing gear like bird legs on it though. Then we have our pilot tokens, which are kind of snapped in here. If I can get them out. Come on, look out. And we got pilot tokens for all of the pilots for both factions. And then we have cards. Now the cards are broken up really weird, which kind of makes me think they added the sentry turrets later. I'm not sure if I can even get these out because of the way I put them back in. The sentry turrets in there are actually in a separate bag, and in my copy anyway, they were shoved in here with a couple of the support drones. And then the actual cards that go to these were wrapped separately than all the other cards, which makes me think that these were added later, which is why they're not listed on the contents of the box. But again, awesome to actually have the sentry turrets in there. Was not expecting those. And then we have our boards. I like how bright they are. They are the solid color that came with the original set, not the semi-transparent hollow boards that came in the Wastelands expansion, but I'm okay with that because I really don't use those anyway. And again, we have our ones for Salty. Same thing, they're that solid color. They're actually, these ones are actually considerably lighter in shade. I don't know if the camera will pick it up than the actual faction color itself. I don't know if they just, the wash made these darker or what, but they, when you see them side by side, they're considerably different. The camera really doesn't do too much. You can see it a little bit there. Not enough to matter though. Then we have our decks here for the factions, and they can't come mix and match back and forth. You got to go through and kind of separate them all out. I'm not sure why they're like that. Must be the way they were printed and cut. But first up, we have all of the different pilots, and these are double-sided with the background war stories on the back. Front side has their abilities, and of course they're color-coded to the factions. Then you have your set of support unit cards for each of the different units, as well as the sentry guns. Then you have your deck that you're going to build your actual mech out of to play. You have 4 of your primary weapons, which have the large P in the corner there. There's 5 sets of the secondary weapons, which have the S. You have your orbital strikes. And you have your reaction cards, your movement cards, and then of course your deploy cards to deploy your support units. Interestingly enough, you do not get a card for the special orbital strike that came with the Kickstarter, which was a little bit more powerful. It was a little bit different than the standard orbital strike, but you do not get one of those in this. But to compensate, there's a couple new weapon types in with the these new mechs. Let's see if I can find one here. You have explosive weapons. I think there's a mortar or something. And artillery is the secondary one there. And there are no counters in your reaction cards back here. You have anti-missile, anti-ballistic. and anti-energy weapon, but there are no defensive cards against those explosive and artillery cards, which really compensates for not having that extra orbital strike option. So in your salty deck, you got pretty much the same thing. Your pilot cards, your unit cards. You've got 4 primary weapon cards, 5 secondary weapons, and then your normal reaction, movement, deploy, and orbital strike cards. And if you're not familiar with the game, when you're building your mech, you get to choose 1 primary and 2 secondary, and then a random assortment, I think, of 13 of the other cards to build your mech. That works as both your draw deck for your weapons that are active, as well as your hit point counter throughout the course of the game. And you're battling it out to destroy the opposing mech, or be the first person to tag and take down 4 of the buildings. Now, this does require the original game to play. It doesn't come with a map, doesn't come with any of the buildings or any of that stuff. But it does add 2 new unique units to the 4 that were in the base set. Overall, if you're a fan of the game, you're going to enjoy it. It adds a lot of new variety, some cool new weapon types, as well as some more options to mix and match with the 4 already in the game. The real drawback to this expansion is its cost. Sitting right now, it's around $130 if you buy it direct from Weta Workshop, plus shipping. Compare that to the whole game, which I think goes for about $150 at retail. Not positive on that. I bought mine on Kickstarter. It was actually cheaper than that. And the base game comes with 4 whole factions, and the board, and the sponsor cards, and all the buildings, and that sort of thing. Where this is just 2 additional units to the game, and it costs nearly as much as the base game. I think it's a bit steep for most players, and if you're not a die-hard fan of the game, it may not really be worth it. Wait till you can find it on sale maybe, or something like that. I think they did a limited print run, which is probably part of the reason it costs so high. Not to mention Weta Workshop's in New Zealand, I think, so you gotta pay for shipping from there, which doesn't help. But if you're a fan of the game, if you have everything, if you were a Kickstarter backer, it's definitely something you're going to be interested in. Unfortunately, from what I've seen, even at conventions, it costs about the same right now. So it's a pricey endeavor to invest in if you're not totally sold on the game premise to begin with. As I said, if you are, you're going to love it. I can't wait to get these to the table and try them out. I haven't seen yet how balanced they are with the other factions. That's something to come in the coming weeks as we get some more games under our belts. But for now, I just like having the extra. I've already made room for them in my Kickstarter box. I made little trays for storage. Made them each their own tray, so I already got a place to store them. You're definitely not going to be storing them in this tray in this god-awful flip-top box that I can't even get on camera. But terrible design packaging. I'll give them that. And the funny part is, there's plenty of room to fit this in the original box. Just the insert for the original box was terrible. And I think everybody who has it's probably replaced that by now with something. So you'll have plenty of room to store them, so you really don't need to store them in that box. Just very disappointing to see such a cheaply made box for such an expensive expansion. To the expansion itself, though, like I said, it's great to have new factions. The models are really cool. I honestly think the heavy hitters are more detailed and painted to a higher quality than the original ones were. So there's that. The addition of the sentry guns was a really welcome thing. I was very disappointed when I originally read that it didn't come with them, and kind of happy to see that it did. So if you're looking for those are in there. And it's one less thing you have to worry about trying to find if you do use the sentry turrets in your games. The one thing of note that is lacking from the expansion, and I didn't even notice till somebody pointed it out to me actually, was that on your support cards for your units, in the original game there's a little clip that goes on the side up here to mark the hit points. And slide it up and down as they take damage. These did not come with those. Then again, a lot of us don't use those clips anyway for fear that they would scratch up the card even through sleeves. I replaced mine with little clear cubes that you can set on there, but you gotta watch, if you bump the table, those can slide, whereas the little clips actually held onto the card. You could just as easily use like a paper clip or something like that to clip on there to do the same effect. But it's kind of annoying that a $130 game expansion skimped on 6 little plastic clips to go on the cards. Maybe they didn't even think about it at the time, but it's kind of a weird omission when it's something that's kind of required, at least by the rules in the base game, to keep track of those stats on those units. Minor thing in the long run, though. If you don't mind the price and you're a fan of the game, definitely pick this up and add some new teams to your arsenals. Also, I'd mentioned about the trays I made to store the different factions in, and I got my room for my new factions here. But one thing I noticed when I started putting them away that I completely forgot, the new factions not only don't come with those little plastic clips there that I talked about, but they also don't come with the achievement tokens. There's 3 achievement tokens for each mech. As you work your way up the board, you flip those over and you get special abilities out of them. They do not come with any of the new factions, so you're going to have to reuse ones from your old factions or make your own to keep with there. Again, another kind of annoying thing with the cost of the Sweet and Salty expansion, the fact that it's missing those. I plan on doing a faction breakdown of all the different weapons, my favorite picks out of there for each of these. Stay tuned for those videos after I've played a few games and get a feel for how they play and what I like best compared to other weapons. And definitely be posting those up in probably in a month or so, depending on, it's right around the holidays now. So it's when I get some games under my belt, so I have a feeling for the factions. But stay tuned for those. That's going to wrap it up for our look at the Sweet and Salty faction expansion for GKR heavy hitters. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.